Hey everybody, welcome to Dedicated Dropouts, where we explore what it takes to succeed as a college dropout. My name is Nate, and I'll be your host for the show. And today's episode is specifically to introduce myself, to give you an idea of the format we'll follow in future episodes, and hopefully you like what you hear and tune in for more. So to get started, in 5 bullet points or less, who am I? What do I do? First and foremost, I am a husband and a father. I have 2 beautiful boys, a 2-year-old and an almost 4-week-old. They definitely keep me on my toes, and my wife and I have almost been married for 5 years now. I'm a solutions architect at BairesDev, which stands for Buenos Aires Development. Basically, what I do as a solutions architect is I help companies build the teams that they need to build software. So I look at a piece of software that a company might want to build, and I say, okay, what are the skill sets needed, the team composition needed, the technologies needed to successfully build this piece of software? And I consult companies in that way as a solutions architect. Along with that, I am building out my own technology consulting practice, mainly just for friends and family at this point, but looking to expand that in the coming months and years. I'm also an aspiring podcast host, so thanks for tuning in and making that dream a reality. The next question on my list here for myself and for future guests is, how did I go from being a college dropout to being a solutions architect? So let's start with when and why I dropped out. I dropped out 4 years ago, January 2019, because I felt stretched thin. I was playing college basketball at Westminster College, which in and of itself is almost a full-time job between the travel and practice and workouts, making sure you're eating the right food, studying film. It's a lot. And it was a lot of fun, but it was definitely time-consuming and physically taxing. I was also taking 16 credits. I was a very serious student. I had never gotten anything lower than an A until I went to Westminster College and took my first computer science class, ironically enough. That was the first B I ever got. And I worked hard in that class. So between taking 16 credits and playing college basketball, I was very, very busy. I was also newly married, getting used to married life, which takes some time to adjust. I was also donating plasma twice a week and working part-time for my dad just to make ends meet, to pay rent, to buy groceries, to pay for gas, all those things that a college student needs. So ultimately, I couldn't sustain that lifestyle, and I quit. I quit so I could work, and I was planning on going back to school, actually. But at the end of the day, what it boiled down to was finances and lifestyle for me. 3 things that I did to put me on the road towards success after dropping out are: 1, I started using LinkedIn. I started working in sales for Go1, and I studied data science and machine learning through Bloomtech. So I'll unpack each of those. First, LinkedIn. LinkedIn has been an incredible tool for me since dropping out. I recommend it to anybody that's looking to progress professionally. My first 2 jobs I found on LinkedIn Jobs and applied through LinkedIn, and I got both of them. And my 3rd job, my current position as a solutions architect, I was recruited via LinkedIn. So it's definitely a tool worth looking into, worth dedicating time to refine your profile, to refine your resume, to make sure that it's something that when people see you on LinkedIn, it piques their curiosity. It shows them somebody that wants to be successful, that is pursuing success, that has success. So LinkedIn has definitely been a major tool in my professional life and getting to where I am today. I also mentioned working in sales for Go1. That was such an awesome first job. I could not have asked for a better first job after dropping out. It was a great environment because the people that I was working with were dedicated to the idea that education is much more than going to school full time at a brick and mortar university. Go One itself is an ed tech platform. It's like the Netflix for e-learning. So they take all of these different online courses and they aggregate them, and then they sell that offering to companies. And what I did for them was I was a sales development representative, which basically meant I made 100 cold calls and sent 100 cold emails every day for a year and a half, which sounds about as fun. Well, it's about as fun as it sounds, right? It's hard, but it was an extremely valuable learning experience in the sense that I got to be rejected a lot, and I got used to being rejected a lot, which made me tougher. It made me more mentally aware of what to say, what not to say, when to say it, when to be silent, things like that. Communication was huge. Obviously, I'd have 10, 15, 20 seconds to catch somebody's attention and try to keep them on the line long enough to set an appointment with them. So getting into that role was a huge, huge success for me at the time and put me down a path of learning, of professional growth, and just so grateful for that first role as an SDR at Go One. Third thing that I did that put me on the road to success was I studied data science and machine learning at Bloomtech. So when I quit, I was planning on going back to school, back to the University of Utah, in fact, and studying data science and computer science there. But when I went and talked to the counselors, they told me that even though I had about 85 credits, I believe, I would need to be at the University of Utah another 5 years. I'd have to study 5 more years in order to get my bachelor's degree, which seemed like a really long time for me for a bachelor's degree. And just looking at where I was and some of the goals I had, one of the biggest goals I had was to avoid debt like the plague. I really did not want to go into student loan debt. I didn't want to have that hanging over my head. And I knew that if I were to go to school for 5 years, the likelihood just increased greatly of me going into debt that I didn't want to have. So the timeline, the idea of having debt, I thought there has to be a better way. So that started me down my search for alternative education routes, and ultimately why I found Bloomtech, which they offered a 1.5 year long part-time data science and machine learning program. No money up front, no tuition up front. It was based on an income share agreement that after I finished the program and landed a job related to what I had studied and that paid me $50,000 a year or more, I could then start paying them 17% of my gross income for 2 years. So I knew that I would have to cough it up eventually, but I also knew I'd be making more than I was, and I would be learning a skill that was extremely valuable, and I wouldn't be in any debt, which was so nice for me and my personal goals. So I decided to start doing that. Along with that, they had an 8-week opt-out. So you could start the program, and if you did it for 8 weeks and you didn't like it, you could stop. So it was a great way for me to explore if I was really interested in it without spending any money, which I didn't have, and potentially learning a really cool new skill, which I did. I stuck with it. I ended up finishing the program in about a year because I went full time after a while. So by the end of 2020, I was done with my machine learning and data science education, and I started working for a company called Forethought as a sales engineer, which took my sales experience at Go One and my data science and machine learning experience from Bloomtech and combined them into a single role for Forethought, where I was helping people use AI and machine learning for customer support, right? Chatbots, sentiment analysis of customer support tickets, that type of thing. So that leads me to my next question, which is, since dropping out, what has been the biggest challenge I've had to overcome, and how did I do it? Well, I'm still doing it. And the biggest challenge is self-doubt, right? For me, at least, self-doubt has always been something I've struggled with, even though I've had a very supportive family and friends, teachers, mentors, coaches. They've always told me, yeah, you can do it. I believe in you, which is a huge, huge blessing. I know a lot of people don't have that in their lives, but in spite of all of the encouragement, I've always had this sense of self-doubt. And that was extremely prevalent right after I dropped out of college, because there was no roadmap anymore. It was the first time in my life where I felt in complete control of my future, which was exciting. I had no boundaries. I had no frameworks. I had no places to be or things to do, which was empowering, but it was also extremely frightening and allowed for a lot of self-doubt to enter into my mind. Had I made the right choice? What was I going to do with my future? A lot of these questions started entering my mind. And really what helped me overcome that, and what continues to help me overcome self-doubt, is hard work. The only antidote for worry is work, is a phrase that I've heard before, and I think that's so true. Instead of worrying, instead of doubting in my own abilities, what I found is, if I have a weakness and I can identify that, and then I turn to a resource to help me strengthen that weakness, that is the only way to overcome the self-doubt. And because for me, instead of having to be confident in myself, I can be confident in the work that I've put in to refine that skill, or to refine that weakness that I've identified. So working hard has definitely helped me to overcome self-doubt. Part of that too is identifying weaknesses, being honest with myself. Where am I weak? What do I need to improve? And then being willing to work to improve in that area. Along those same lines, I would not be here without focusing on the uplifting relationships in my life, and actually listening to some of my friends and family, mentors, when they say I can do it, realizing that I can, and having that growth mentality that I might not be perfect at what I'm trying to do, but I can do it. Other people have achieved similar success. So whatever the goal is that I'm shooting for, whatever the challenge is that I'm faced with, listening to the encouraging voices around me and having spent time building relationships that uplift me personally has been a huge help. Having a safety net, a support group, whether that's family, friends, coworkers, or all of the above, that has been huge for me in helping me overcome self-doubt. Next question is, what has been the most impactful media? This could be a book, a podcast, an influencer, a YouTube channel, in my professional life, and why? I can't limit it to just one. Sorry. There have been two books that, especially when I dropped out, shortly after dropping out, made a very big impact in my life. And one was Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss, and the other is Mindset by Carol Dweck. Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss is a really interesting read. He's a former FBI negotiator, and so he tells some interesting stories about negotiation, and his perspective is that everything is a negotiation in life. So why was it so impactful to me, though? I'm not a master negotiator by any stretch of the imagination, but chapters 2 and 3 specifically, they talk about mirroring and labeling, which have been two tools that I've used to improve my ability to communicate and thus create stronger relationships with the people around me. So extremely, extremely valuable soft skills kind of a book about communication, negotiation, And for me, I've taken that and used it to help build the relationships around me, which, as I mentioned before, has helped me overcome some of the greatest challenges, including self-doubt in my life. The other book that I mentioned was Mindset by Carol Dweck. It's all about two types of mindsets, the growth mindset and the fixed mindset. And what I love about this book is it's helped me acknowledge where I have a fixed mindset in my life, where I might say, well, I'm just not good at this, or, oh, I could never do that, or I'm really good at this. That's also a fixed mindset, right? Saying that you're really good at something can be a fixed mindset, and it can have its own set of issues. Instead, what that book has helped me do is focus on the process of becoming, and focus on not needing to be a perfectionist or not even having to be the best at something, but being willing to take on new experiences for the sake of growth alone. That has been very empowering. And the way that she lays out the growth mindset, the fixed mindset, has been extremely insightful for me and has encouraged me to take chances and take on new opportunities, do things like this podcast, for example, where it's a little uncomfortable, to be honest, right? Especially right now, I'm sitting in my garage talking to myself. But taking on challenges that are uncomfortable, that push your limits, and knowing that you might fail, that you might not be the best, that is the growth mindset, because you have a higher goal of developing who you are, and there's no growth in the comfort zone. So that book, she says it so much better than I just did. Mindset by Carol Dweck, highly recommend it to anybody that's looking to grow, that's looking to push themselves to a next level and overcome a mindset of I can't. Next question. What is a tool that I depend on, and how do I use it? It might not be that unique, but I use Google Tasks every day, multiple times a day, but I don't really use it in just a to-do list kind of fashion. I've taken my own spin on it, combining the 4 quadrants from 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, another really great book. So let me unpack that a little bit. The Google Tasks app, that's just a to-do list, right? Very common. I'm sure many of you use it yourselves. But the 4 quadrants from 7 Habits of Highly Effective People include the first quadrant, which is urgent and important. Urgent and important tasks might be something like getting flowers for your wife for your anniversary. There's a deadline, there's a timeline that needs to be met, but it's also serving a higher purpose, which in this case would be building a relationship with your wife. Okay? That's how I define it, at least. The second quadrant is urgent and not important. These are like the crises of life. Your toilet explodes and you need to get that fixed. It's urgent, but it's not necessarily helping you on your way to your higher mission or higher values in life. It's not achieving a higher goal. So urgent, but not important. That's what that would be. And then not urgent and important, that's where you want to spend as much time as possible. So not urgent and important, to me, that's this podcast. Nobody's telling me I have to do it. Nobody's giving me a timeline of when to do it. But for me, it's important because it's helping me grow. It's hopefully going to help me with my network and push me to a new place professionally and personally that I want to be. So this is an important thing to me, but it's not urgent. Again, that's where I try to spend more time than I currently am, and that's where we want to spend the most time. And then not urgent and important, the fourth quadrant, that's like watching The Office for the 8th time. I spend too much time personally in that quadrant, trying to spend more time, again, in that third quadrant of not urgent and important. So all that to say, I've basically taken Google Tasks and I've just made different to-do lists for each of those quadrants. And so when I have a thought, I say, okay, I write down what I need to do. And then at least once a day, I take my to-do list and I prioritize it into those different quadrants. And then within those quadrants, I prioritize those tasks. So it helps me focus on what's most important, what needs to get done now, and time management, right? So I use that tool very, very religiously for my time management. Next question. In one sentence, what's the most important lesson you've learned from dropping out and why? That's a really good question, Nate. Thanks for asking. Well, the most important lesson that I've learned is that the more value that I can provide to other people, the more success I have. That's the beauty of the society that we live in, is that you have to serve others in order to be rewarded. And that service has to be valuable to other people. And so it makes you think, well, what can I do for other people to help them? And that's the only way that you can get ahead. That's it, at least in my experience. I'm curious to hear other people's thoughts. Comment below in the comment section if you have a differing opinion or think like I do. But basically, let me give you an example. So with machine learning and data science, yeah, that was interesting to me. But what I found is that it's opened up opportunities for me because my ability to use that knowledge, the knowledge I gained in studying machine learning and data science, enabled me to provide value to customers at Forethought, customers at BairesDev, and because of the value that I create for them, it's enabled success in my life. It's enabled opportunities in my life. So I'm working to provide more and more value for all of you, for people in my network, for future opportunities, so that I can increase the success that I enjoy in my life. Well, that's it for this episode of Dedicated Dropouts. I hope you enjoyed the show. Please be sure to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more insights in the future. Thanks so much for listening, and until next time, stay dedicated.